Hello, welcome to My Generation podcast, brought to you by the South Shore Senior newspaper. I'm your host, Steve Dubin. South Shore Seniors is a monthly newspaper that connects both seniors and the sandwich generation on a monthly basis to provide useful information. This segment is about elder law, and our guest is Liz Caruso, who is an undergraduate of UMass Amherst, my proud alma mater as well.
Go Minutemen.
And then she went on to higher education to Suffolk University, where she received a law degree. She works for the Legal Legacy Planning LLC elder law group out of Norwell. Welcome, Liz.
Thank you very much for having me.
So, Liz, I think, unfortunately, elder law is something that is both misunderstood and in some cases avoided, that people don't want to talk about it. They don't want to address it. Let me start there. How do you talk to, family members, in particular sandwich generation, who might be saying, my parents are getting old and we really need to make sure that their affairs are in place? How do you start that conversation?
I mean, you really start it with you don't know what you don't know, right? I mean, you get all this information from so many different sources. And in today's world, it's so easy to just Google things and you're getting it in 100 different directions. And it's so hard to know what's truthful and what's not. So finding an attorney or an elder law attorney that specializes in this area to be able to ask questions and at least get direct answers that are state specific is really important, because a lot of the information that you're getting out there is very generalized, and what works in California may not work here. We have very specific laws here in Massachusetts with regard to probate and estate planning, and the way that we transfer real estate and the way that we own things here is so different than so many other parts of the country that it's really hard to not talk to somebody who's, doesn't practice here in Massachusetts, because they're not going to be able to give you factual information. Okay.
And so I think most people unfortunately react to fear as opposed to, blue sky. And so let's talk a little bit about some of the worst case scenarios if you don't plan and have your affairs in order. An example of that is on my street in Plymouth. There's a house in probate, and no one knows, when that will come out of probate. In the meantime, what's left after the raccoons have gotten to that house?
Correct. Oh, yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about, some of the worst case scenarios if people don't plan?
So the real estate example you just gave is an easy one, where, a house is stuck in probate and it's just kind of wasting away and you're losing money. What's even worse is when a person is stuck in probate. And this happens when you don't have a healthcare proxy or a power of attorney, because in Massachusetts, there is no law that allows for anybody else to make a decision for you if you don't have the capacity to make it. You need a court order for somebody else to make those decisions. The way that you avoid that court order is having a healthcare proxy or a power of attorney. Without those in place, if something happens where someone loses capacity, whether it's temporary or permanent, then a loved one, spouse, child, friend, whatever, has to petition the probate court and prove to the probate court what needs to be done. So you're airing out all of your issues in the public forum when you never had to. And this takes time and it adds stress to an already stressful situation, and it's so easily avoided.
Okay. So I guess, where do you start? So, I think you make a convincing argument that you really need to prepare. What's step one?
I would say step one is putting together a list of what you have and how you own it. Whether that's as a, person in the sandwich generation, sitting down with a parent, going through their tax returns or going through their files, or, as an elder, going through your assets and kind of making lists, and then meeting with an elder law attorney, because we can, guide you through the different options that you have to protect each asset, what would work for your specific situation. And if it's something that we can't tackle, whether you need financial planning advice or you need, an accountant to help with more complex tax situations or something like that, you can either work with the professional you're already working with, or we can give you suggestions as to, who would be a good fit for you.
Okay, and the time frame of all of this, from first meeting to completion of documents?
Oh God, that's a loaded question. It really depends on the client. I've done them as quickly as, a 1 month turnaround, because people are really motivated. And, it's taken as long as a year because people get really overwhelmed. You start to have these really difficult conversations, and you ask people to pick, how you want your estate to be divided. And it brings up, issues that may have, lasted for a really long time of, don't, giving money or lending money to a family member that you expect to have paid back, or, feeling in your heart that you want to give more money to one child than another because of their life situation or their job or something like that. And putting that down in paper can be so overwhelming for some people that they just get bogged down and don't want to do it. And they, shut down and stop talking to me.
Yeah.
So it can be an overwhelming process, but we help you get through it.
Okay, all right. And how long have you been doing this?
I have been an attorney for almost 14 years at this point.
Okay, very good. And so, there obviously there's a lot of elder law practices out there. What makes yours somewhat different from others? Or how do you find you differentiate?
So we have firsthand knowledge, each of us in our own families, where we have taken care of an elder in our in our lives, whether it has been, in the capacity of being the trustee or the personal representative or something like that for them, to help them with the legal aspects. Some of my colleagues have been actual caregivers to family members. So we have practiced what we preach. We are all originally from the South Shore. I grew up in Holbrook. Our colleagues grew up in Quincy and Abington. So we know where you're coming from. And then we also, we still live here. We raise our families here, and we are 3 women. And, like it or not, a lot of these issues fall to women and, working mothers who are taking care of their parents and their kids at the same time, which most of us are doing here in the office.
Right.
So we definitely, we have a perspective that I think that we can, really empathize with our clients.
Okay. Once again, men avoid all the hard work. We'll leave that alone. You don't need to comment there. So what are some of the common misconceptions that people walk in your door with?
I would say the 2 biggest misconceptions are estate planning is only for rich people, because it's not. It's actually worse for people who have less money, because it can all be eaten up through the probate court process. And that a will is going to be good enough to keep your family out of probate. A will in Massachusetts actually guarantees that your family will go through probate. And it is, it doesn't give anybody the authority to do anything with your estate once you have passed away without court authority. So you have to go back and ask permission from the court to do anything as far as sell real estate, to disperse money and all that. And it makes it a lot more difficult than some of the other methods that we have, like trusts or joint ownerships or changing deeds during your lifetime.
Okay, and both of us have mentioned probate a number of times. we understand it, but I think it's a term that's vague to those who are not in our world. Can you describe it?
Yes. So probate in Massachusetts is the courthouse that takes care of administering trusts and estates. So each county has their own probate court. Some have multiple. So if you're talking about like Plymouth County, they're in both in Plymouth and Brockton. And the probate court is, the judge who sits on the bench and takes in the petition that reviews the wills and reviews guardianships and conservatorships, which is the process that you go through if you don't have a power of attorney or a healthcare proxy. And they also happen to do divorces as well. So that's the probate realm.
Okay. And you mentioned a will. Is the will enough of a document to help with the transition? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So, I mean, very rarely is a will enough. In Massachusetts, if you own real estate, we highly recommend that you have a trust as well, because like I said earlier, the will is going to guarantee that you go through probate. And if you have a trust, if it's written properly and the house is conveyed to the trust, then you're hopefully going to avoid probate. And when you pass away, whoever you've put in charge of your trust is going to immediately be able to take care of your house, whether that's put up a for sale sign, distribute it to your kids or whatever, without having to wait for the probate court to give your permission. So you're making it a much easier process for your beneficiaries to be able to receive their inheritance quicker and with much less fees by avoiding things going through your will in the probate court.
And what other documents do you recommend someone have in place?
Absolutely a healthcare proxy, a power of attorney. We tell everybody to have a will as kind of like a just in case. So, maybe you open a bank account after we go through your estate plan and you forget to put that in your trust. Well, your will is going to make sure that it buttons everything up after you pass away. You want to have a HIPAA release so that if your healthcare proxy needs to get your medical records, they can. And then you want to make sure that you have all of the necessary real estate documents in place to correctly put your real estate into the trusts that we have created.
Okay. And then, at the appointment itself of meeting with you, who do you recommend come to that appointment?
Typically, we would like to see just the decision makers that we're going to have draft the estate plan for, because we want people to speak freely. So if they're going to bring, children or friends or whatever, that's going to bring other opinions to the table. And we want to have, a confidential, out in the open, one-on-one conversation with our clients. So if they're a single person, we typically just like to see that person. If they're a married couple, we'd like to see, both spouses.
Okay. And then I know that one of the big concerns about aging is if I get really sick and have to go to the nursing home, will I lose my entire estate in paying for that nursing home? How do I avoid that?
Mm-hmm. That's a huge concern for a lot of people. And, the nursing home is never going to actually take your house. They're going to make you sell it and then use the cash to pay them. But they're never going to, walk in the front door, take the keys or anything like that, which I think is something that people are actually afraid of. And then what we do as elder law attorneys is we help people. Typically in this situation, it's, children who are helping parents, or a spouse helping the other spouse who's sick pay for nursing home care. And we go through their assets and help them figure out, what makes sense to spend down. If there are ways that we can save it through the Mass Health laws, Mass Health being the government program that pays for long-term care in Massachusetts. There are a myriad of rules that are designed to help families save money and still qualify. So we go through each of those rules and see, how much we can save for each family. A lot of these mass health techniques are horrible financial planning because, it's emergency planning because all of a sudden you're faced with a $15,000 a month nursing home bill. So these are things we don't do, ahead of time. And we don't suggest, go talk to your financial planner or your accountant about all of the ways that we're going to, run up taxes by cashing out 401ks. But, these are things that need to be done in an emergency. And often we can save with a married couple almost every penny for them to be able to not have to give it all to the nursing home.
Okay. And is there anything else that we did not cover about, elder law planning, estate planning that folks should know, be prepared for?
I think the biggest thing is that you need to be honest with us as your attorneys, and you need to be honest with yourself as to, what you want to happen after you pass away. And you need to be, you need to not worry about what people are going to think about the decisions that you've made, because ultimately that they're your decisions. And, my job is to make sure that what you want to happen happens and is put down on paper, and that your wishes are honored, no matter what those wishes are. I'm not here to, judge what your wishes are. And then to make sure that that you give some serious thought as to who you're going to put into positions of power throughout your estate plan. So, who do you trust to be your healthcare proxy? Who's going to advocate for you? If you have a child who's a nurse, they're the best healthcare proxies there are because they understand the medical jargon. And they also can, they're used to translating that medical jargon to families all the time. So, that's a perfect person. If you have financial people in your life, they're probably going to make a good power of attorney or trustee because, again, they understand the jargon. And also, don't be afraid to pick one child over another in these positions of power. You're not giving them a gift. You're making them work. And, the one who's not chosen is probably not going to be mad. They're going to be thanking their siblings for doing all the work.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, that's great. I learned a lot. I think those who listen to this will also have a better understanding of the situation. And so that brings us towards the end of our podcast. What's the best way that folks can reach you for more information and potentially to set up an appointment?
Going to our website is the best thing to do. It is www.legacylegalplanning.com. There you can schedule appointments with myself or the other two attorneys in the office. You can see our social media. We put up a lot of informational tips up there, both on Instagram and Facebook. And you can see what we're going to be doing in the community. I know coming up, we're going to be volunteering with the Norwell Memory Cafe at the end of the month. So you can see what we're doing.
Okay. And can you give me your website address again?
Sure. It's legacylegalplanning.com.
Okay, that's easy enough. Even I can remember that. Well, thank you very much for being part of South Shore Senior News, My Generation podcast. I look forward to talking with you in the future, and thank you for being on today.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.